About another minute or so, Sheena?
Yeah, just in case people are between meetings. Ben, did you happen to see the chat from Randy?
Did not.
It added for May of 2021.
Really?
Yeah, it's a different link every month, I guess.
Don't send it every month. Let me grab the one that I've got because I haven't seen one since, I don't know, October and November. So I'll grab that while you want to take the first couple of slides then, and I will look for that.
Sure, no
Well,
problem.
good. Got one for May of 2021. Take it, Randy.
All right. So welcome to the online virtual Agile user meetup. Today we're going to talk about measuring team health and acting upon it. Just want to let you know for next month, we're going to be focused on Scrum Masters, and we're going to have like a roundtable conversation. We're going to have people participate as experienced Scrum Masters, kind of share their experiences. It's your opportunity to ask questions and maybe get some insight to people who have had some challenges in that role or their experiences in general. So look forward to that. It's February 18th looking forward to having you there.
Here, I found the link. So
today we will be presenting the topic. So myself, Sheena Gladden, I'm an Agile coach working towards my certified Scrum trainer. So Randy, you were mentioning that, hence what Ben was saying. I've worked in different organizations as a consultant as well as full-time, and really enjoy working in Agile and Scrum for many years now, and being able to now teach it to others as well. So we enjoy this topic and love having different opportunities to bring up different topics in this forum.
And I'm Ben Floyd, and I too am a certified Scrum professional. I was product owner for a couple of years and a Scrum master for the better part of 10 years. And I absolutely love the people in the process. I love the team. I love watching a team come together. I love to watch them perform and excel. And so this subject right here is very close to me. I use this team health with all of my teams that I was a part of. So this one's very close to me, and I look forward to sharing it with you. So with that, I'll jump into this first one here, Sheena. Team health. So team health, this is a concept about that's been around for a while. Measuring our team health. It's been called a number of different things over the years. Some places have called it team maturity models. Some have called it, at Spotify, they've called it squad health checks. I just called it a team health, measuring my team health. And all of the reasons behind it kind of varied. A lot of management wanted to check in and see how their teams are doing. Did they need assistance? Where could they help out? I always looked at it from my team members as far as being a Scrum Master. What did my team need? And I wanted them to have a voice, and I wanted them to say, hey, this is how we actually feel, instead of me as a Scrum Master saying, this is what I think they need. I wanted to actually know what they thought they needed and how they felt they were doing. So I used to check in with them and give them a voice and let me know how they felt they were doing. Things they thought we were doing great, I kept encouraging. Things that they clearly thought we needed improvement upon, I would look at the things, probably one or two that were the most glaring, and then act upon them. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'll show you a couple examples of some background of these, and then I'll show you the tool that I came up with here. So back to you, Sheena.
So I'd like to get a poll, and we're going to do it in the chat. Share with me how you measure your teams now. How do you know your team health? Do you use anything in particular? What do you measure by? So go ahead and enter it into the chat. Don't know? Okay.
I just ask them.
How they're doing. What do you, Rob, I'd be curious, what do you get when you ask? Is it, you know, everything's good?
Usually it's a lot of shrugging and all right, I guess.
Okay.
Rob, can I ask you a little bit? I'm going to wait since you took a bite. Is it depend on, do you find a lot of it depends on how their day's been going, how the week's been going, how the last release was going, how traffic was?
No, we're all remote except for me apparently. But it seems like everyone's like, oh, I'm fine. And I'll be like, hey, I'm just having a really hard time at the moment. And they're like, it's just you, man. So generally my teams seem to like they're just happy, which is great.
Okay. And then, okay. I'll hand it back to, I've got a question on that, but I'll hand it back to Sheena. There's some other ones that are coming through.
Yeah, so I see a lot of one-on-ones. So kind of curious, do you get the same responses just like Rob does, or for those that say they do a lot of one-on-ones?
I personally don't. Sometimes I get, yeah, I'm good, but I try to not have scheduled one-on-one, but I do it based more on their tone and what I'm picking up during stand-ups, refinements, and how they're doing. And then I tend to get more information from them because you can tell when they're either doing really well or not doing so well.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I was going to say, for me, sometimes I do get good feedback on the one-on-ones, but sometimes we have some, I'll say introvert team members. They're not as open to discussing a lot of things. They just say everything's well, and there's not a lot of input that comes in from them or feedback, I guess, to understand exactly how they're doing, specifically about their relationships within the team members. Like, I have an example of one of the team members I would have one-on-ones with, and he would say everything's good, and all of a sudden yesterday he sends a message and is like, oh, I keep having to do this, and this. It's like, I don't know if it's my responsibility. So that kind of goes back to, he's not clearly communicating exactly what's going on.
Right. And actually, you led me to my next question, which was along that line. So when we ask, right, are they interpreting it as in how am I doing just in general, or as it relates to the team, the work that I'm doing, things along that line? So you got into that a little bit more, which is great. Thank you for sharing that. So I see.
Well, that can go like that interview question. Tell me about yourself.
Right.
So
which part
is
do you want to know?
it about me? Is it about me professionally? And so when you ask that question, you can kind of gauge some information on how they're answering the question about how did the sprint go, and then they can talk about how they did, how the team did, how deployment went, and now you get a perspective of what their focus is coming from as well.
Right. Great. Yeah, actually, I was just reading your comment, like 1 to 10, how did this sprint work for you? And so I see a lot of reaching out for individuals, whether it's directly or through messaging, getting a pulse and such. So, okay, great. Thank you for sharing. So when you get that feedback, how do you get it? Do you get it? Ben, do you mind going to the next slide? Do you visualize it? Do you transfer it into some kind of format? And does it get shared with the team?
Saying nope.
think it depends on what the feedback is. If it's something that the team needs to improve on that the person didn't feel comfortable talking about, it might be something that I put on our Trello board to discuss during retros. And I kind of lead the conversation, and then they'll tend to jump and piggyback on that. And then the discussion gets brought up as a team.
Okay. Any others?
When we go through our 1 to 10, we also, so everybody puts theirs up on, when we were in person, it would be sticky note, put it up on the board, write your number, and then why. And then they would say, I give this one an 8 because, you know, it's got a great beat, I can dance to it, or whatever their answer is, but there's a why behind the what.
And David, you do those during your retros, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, great.
I was going to say also there's another set of questions that I also put in my retro for the team to answer the first, and they have a rating that's like 1 through 5 to say how is the team's communication and collaboration this sprint, and the other one, how is your work-life balance type of questions, just to kind of get a gauge as to how the sprint went for them, both from a collaborative effort as a team, and then also perhaps individually for their work-life balance, because now everybody's remote. So based upon those answers, then we have additional follow-up discussions, or if everything's going well, you know, based upon their answers. And by the way, the answers are it's up to them if they want to answer it via anonymous or if they want to keep it as relevant or apparent. So we can ask questions at that point afterwards.
Okay, great. So some of you gather it, maybe come up with a way to share it with the rest of the team. And then how do you act upon that information? So some of it's bringing it up in retro, but how else, or anything more beyond bringing it up in retro?
I'll go. I think for me, if there's an issue that we're discussing, I try to have them categorize if it's an inner team thing that we can solve, or if it might be in the org. Like if it's Jenkins's, you know, something needs to be addressed. That way I know if we need to chew on it as a team and process and troubleshoot, or if I need to maybe escalate that to my Scrum management and then get more leaders involved in like really solving the problem, or, you know, pulling the rest of the devs, because it could be isolated to just one code base area or like one team. So that's kind of how I start the process there. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I just probe a little bit to find out where it's at and where we might be able to address it. And then usually if they don't feel comfortable talking about it during the retro, follow up with a one-on-one, or if they do share what it is, if it's some action I need to take back with leadership to address it, or if it's a problem within the team, and then we can talk about it a little bit further.
And, you know, I love what all of you are sharing, because a lot of people will react to how many story points or how much the team delivered. So it's great to hear that you're really in touch with your teams and that it's not based off of just the story points. So yeah, that's great to hear. Ben?
Okay, thanks, Sheena. All right, so we're talking about how do we actually visualize this information, and then not just visualizing, but then how do we act upon it? I told you I'd give you a little bit more background. I want to show you some examples of some of those maturity models that have been around. This is one that I came across. Maturity models received their start, believe it or not, from the Department of Defense back in the late 80s. And this is an example of one. It actually had me laughing quite a bit. Department of Defense came up with a maturity model to measure the effectiveness of their vendors on their ability to deliver software. And if you look at this model right here, the top is where you want to be, and that shows that you're optimized. The bottom is their initial layout, and the numbers are actually, well, to me, they seem different. Initial is where they started off and they give it a 5, and then you want to work your way up to a 1 being optimized. So this was one way that the Department of Defense came came up with a maturity model, a team health check model to visualize and explain how a team, or in this case, a vendor might be doing. This is one that Heinrich Nyberg used he published this one back in 2014 at Spotify. And this is called a squad health check. And I did a derivative off of this one. And this was a way that I thought it was a great way to visualize it. And I wanted to build upon this. We didn't do tribes and squads and that sort of thing. So I built off of something similar off of this one that Heinrich and Christian Ludwig did. So this is another version. And then this is yet another version. So you can see there's a lot of different ways. And the way we're going to show you today, we're going to share with you this free tool. It just takes Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint or Google Docs to use. It's really up to you how you want to visualize the information. The key being is, as coaches, as Scrum Masters, how do you show this information to your team? How do you actually have information that you have these good intentions, and then how do you act upon it? How do you bridge that gap? How do you say, this is where we're at in January? And then if you go to check with your team in, let's say July, how do you know the difference? How do you check in with your team and say, we checked in back in January and now it's July. How are we doing? How do we measure that? How do we say Randy felt like this, or I'm not going to, Randy's team felt like this back in January. Randy's team is feeling like this now in July. Well, they feel the support of the Scrum Master was pretty good. And now here in July, they don't feel they're getting that good of support from their Scrum Master now. Okay, let's have a conversation about that. So this tool is really just to bridge that gap between the good intentions and showing results, and giving you as a coach and a Scrum Master something that you can actually work towards and visualize and be transparent with your teams. And please, this is an open conversation. Any questions, just jump right in, okay? So I took the concept of the stoplight, being that everyone's pretty familiar with red, yellow, and green. You know, green being, let's go for it, go as fast as we can. Things are great here. Everyone says, hey, green light, love it. Yellow light starts to tell us we should be aware of this. This should be on our radar. Most of us speed up a little, get through light. Just be aware that something's on our radar. Red light, everyone knows red light, we should stop, but we usually speed up and tell the officer it was yellow just a minute ago. Yep, I see you smiling. Yep, you've used that too, Lorena. So I used the basic concept to visualize how are we doing. Green, it's all good. Yellow, we're not so sure. And then red is a warning sign. And I used the same as the Roman voting. You know, thumbs up, we're all good here. Sideways, not so much. Thumbs down. So what I've done then is I added these categories. Now I'm going to show you these categories that I used with my teams. Again, this is something that you can edit in Google Docs, okay? So these could be any categories that seem to fit your team or your organization. So for example, I measured teamwork. How are we working as a team? Red, yellow, or green? And what I would do with the red, yellow, or green is I would give them a description. What's a green mean? What does a yellow mean? What does a red mean? Are we delivering value? Is the work that we're doing here valuable? The increments that we're creating? Are we receiving support from the Scrum Master? Are you receiving support from the product owner or clarification? How's our team process right now? Are we working well as a team, or is our process? Do you understand the process? And I'm going to get into these. I won't go through each one, but I'm just showing you the last one that I used to check in with teams. Quality, the speed, not necessarily are we going fast, but are we moving towards our overall product goal? The learning one was always interesting because most of my teams always wanted to be learning new skills. And then this one was, do we have the roadmap? Do we have the vision? Do we know what we're working towards? So these were just 10 categories that I used to put up for the teams on the red, yellow, and green. Any questions or comments on these before I move on and dive deeper into these?
So did you capture those 10 each time, or you randomly went through those, or a variety of them, or how did you go about that?
Great question, David. So what I would do is I laminated these cards. So these are in PowerPoint, and I laminated these. I printed these out off, and I laminated these. And I'm going to show them to you just here in a second. We're going to do this in Mural as an activity. And I would put them up. This is obviously way before COVID. And I'd put them up in a meeting room, and they would be able to come up with a dry erase marker and fill in the bubble next to red, yellow, or green for each one of these 10 categories. So they had autonomy as they walked around the room, and they could say, for quality, I think I'm a yellow. And for team process, I think we're a green. And they would walk around the room, all the team members, and they would fill in for all 10 of these categories where they felt. And then I could wipe off the laminated boards and use them again in 6 months or 9 months when I want to check the same categories again. So I could reuse these over and over again.
Cool.
And then since I'm going to do this in Mural, I would use the same categories. The key is to use the same categories to measure your team again. So that way you've got the baseline and then see what kind of progress you've made in 6 months or 9 months or 12 months.
And I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So we did something similar to this, almost exactly, but I think for us, we did a rank of 1 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, we did get good insights, but our problem was we were measuring the red, yellow, green based on the score and not really like in the individual sentiment. So if you didn't have full participation, like 2 people might, really throw that thing off. And so I'm curious how this, I'm trying to visualize what you said when they walk by the board. How do you see how many people participated? Do you have like that?
Can I put a pin on that one? And coming to show you that, to visualize that. And then, like you said, if you've got a team of 10, one person can really skew it. Not too bad. So for example, we had one person on our team that was just not a really good fit for a Scrum team and because of their attitude. And so, for example, we had fun on our team, and we had 9 people that give it a green. And it fit the description of why we were having fun on that team. We had 1 red. So as a Scrum Master on that team, I wasn't too concerned about whether or not we were doing well, because I had 9 green and 1 red. I was fairly certain as to where that little Eeyore type of attitude was coming from. So what I did was I focused on the other categories, and I'll show those to you. So I'm going to punt on that one just for a minute, and as we get to the visualization ones.
And you'll get a chance to actually experience it as well as we go through.
Awesome. So excited. Thank you.
Okay.
Ben, can I ask what was the frequency of you doing this with the team?
Great question, Garo. So it depended on the team and how long the team had been together.
Okay.
So for example, the last 2 teams I was with, my payments team, I did this probably once a year because that team had been together 4.5 years, and we didn't have a lot of parts moving in and out, and we had reached to the point where we were continuous integration, and they were a well-performing team. For a new team, if I were to be a new Scrum Master and a newly formed team, I'd probably run this. I know Heinrich talked about that he would do this once a quarter for a new team. I'd say once a quarter to every 6 months for a new team. You need to give yourself as a coach and a Scrum Master time to act on it.
So a follow-up question in regards to that. Say if you are doing it on a quarterly or every 6 months or so, say if you are acting upon it, how do you measure if what you're doing is actually helping?
Okay, so and we'll see that when we visualize it here in just a few minutes.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. All right, so the big reveal now is this is how it would actually look like on the board that they would come around. And this one is an example of support from their product owner and Scrum Master. So here's the red, yellow, and green. And the description's right there in the center. That's what you can edit to fill in whatever you want the description to be. So for red, were they getting support from their product owner and Scrum Master? We're getting stuck here. We can't get help and the support that the team needs. That was the description for red. If they felt like a yellow, the support we get from our product owner and Scrum Master, it's okay. Or green was we're always getting support from our product owner and our Scrum Master. And the circles over on the right is where they would fill it in with a dry erase marker. And you
Hey,
can
Ben,
do
I have
this.
a quick question.
Yes, sir.
These are kind of general.
Right.
So how do you get to the point where you can get more specifics so that you can act on those specifics? Because if the majority of the team said support for the team's all right, I wouldn't really know how to act on that.
So that's the great two parts to that, Greg, is this is strictly up to you as how specific you want to be in these descriptions. We're going to give you at the end of this conversation meetup today, we're going to give you the PowerPoint and the Excel files so you can make these as specific as you want. And then the other part is however you want to make these descriptions, if you want to leave them general, like right here, when we go to the next slide and we show you the visualization, if something was a lot of red and there's one or two categories that are red or yellow, and I really want to focus on those as a coach or a Scrum Master, then I'm going to have a deep dive conversation and get away from the general down into the details.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but I wanted to verify.
Right. So the problem area is when I go from the general to the specific and we have that conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. So this is what the tool looks like. And here's another example. Here's a roadmap one, just to give you another example. There isn't any high level picture. There isn't any focus. That's a red for us. Sometimes we know what we're working towards. That's a yellow. Green, we know what we're working towards and we're excited about it. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to give you a chance to actually experience this in Mural. So let me stop sharing and share with you in Mural a link here. I'm going to put it into the chat channel, and you don't have to register with Mural. You can just enter as a visitor. If you go to the Zoom chat channel, you'll see the link. And come on in here. Over on the left-hand side, you will see there's a bunch of purple and red check marks. You can grab the check marks, just zoom in and read any of the categories for teamwork, support, and team roadmap. And then just read the descriptions and go around the room and put check marks as to where you would feel for your current team.
Is everyone familiar with Mural and know how to navigate? Does anyone need assistance with that? If you have a mouse, you use the scroll to zoom in and out.
Okay.
If you're just working off of the track on the lower right-hand side, there's zoom plus and minus and to zoom in and out. And then you just click and drag to go right or left or up or down.
We're getting some red in the fun category. I'm going to stack the vote. So I'm going to share.
That was me. We have a lot of fun on our team.
I love the green.
We do dad jokes at the end of every stand-up. Someone's responsible for telling
Nice.
a dad joke.
So hopefully you're seeing how this could work in person or online. This also works if you want autonomy. I know someone mentioned earlier in the chat channel that you could do direct messages, and you have introverts on your team. You could do the exact same thing if you wanted to with everyone being remote, where you could use a tool like this. You could also post this in a team, Microsoft Teams or Slack channel, and then have people direct message you and say, Lorena, I put a check mark in red for teamwork and green for support and green for, and then you've earned their trust, and they're saying put a green here, put a yellow there, put a green here, and then your team members just direct message you of how they feel for each and every one, and you just fill them out as the coach or the Scrum Master.
Continue to have your one-on-ones, but now you have something to really base it off of. How do you think we're doing as far as the team roadmap and having that conversation? So it's a little bit more focused rather than how are you doing? And then depending on what they're going through that day is the reaction that they give you. Now you got something more tangible for them to measure and to give you feedback on.
The one last thing before I switch back to the PowerPoint here is you'll notice that I use all purple and I used all red check marks. And I did the exact same thing back when I was in person, is I would use all the same dry erase marker, because believe it or not, people would say, oh, if I grab the blue marker, he'll know that that was me. And I didn't want them to know that. They actually, I heard someone once say that. So I would use all the same color dry erase marker on my laminated boards so they could have that autonomy. And the same thing I'm doing right here in Mural is I don't know who the red check marks are and I don't know who the purple check marks are. And I don't really care. The value is in the conversation based on where the check marks land.
Hey, Ben,
And
so
so-
then why use two different colors? Why didn't you just use one?
I in case people were colorblind, and also just to give variety to it, it was all that it was. Yes, Randy.
Well, I was just going to say, like, the tool that we are using is Miro, which is, but I believe it tracks like every change that you make. Like you can go and like see the history and like who did what. And I'm wondering, you know, it's like, I mean, this is great, except for it's like, at least in Miro, I don't think I can make it anonymous.
So if you, my 2 cents to that, Randy, is if people are aware of that, or if they have that worry about that, I would revert to the direct messaging, let people, hopefully you've got that level of trust where they say, you know, Randy, could you put red here, yellow there, green on this one, green on this one, and then they just direct message you that way, and
Okay.
put their check marks where they want them.
Okay. I mean, it's nice in a way to see who did stuff, but sometimes you don't want it to be.
Actually, let's say, Randy, we also use Miro. There's an option for you to share the board where it doesn't require the people to log in. So they would go in as guests. So you wouldn't necessarily see exactly who it was that what update did, who made which updates.
There you go. Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Any questions on this before I switch back to the slide deck? Okay, so this is when I was punting Lorena to later on. This is the results. So again, I built this strictly out of PowerPoint and Excel. And this is where I would track the results. These are the categories. And then it's simply just filling in each one of those little Excels, those actual cells with a green, a yellow, or a red. And then I go ahead and I take a look at this and I see where the greens are, where the yellows are, and where the reds are for this team. And this is my baseline for that December of 2018, and see where this team is doing. And again, I'm not here to support, you know, just Microsoft Office. You could do this with the Google document docs, as well, or, with Apple tools as well.
Is the right number the variance from before?
Correct. The number on the far right was the variance from the previous version. Good catch, Jamie. So let me go forward another slide for you. So here is a team, and I just put in there your team. So I saved this team. Sheena, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So if you were a Scrum Master, you met with your team in March, and then you met with them again. You went through this exercise, seeing categories, and you met with them again in July. What would you get from this result, and where would your areas of concern be, if any?
Definitely in the pawn or the player, I guess, is one area for sure, because it didn't look like it got changed. It's still the same situation, is what I would say for one. And then maybe the team process.
Yeah, team process jumped out for me. Actually, support from PO and SM jumped out a lot. It went down quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Or even when you initially start in March, right? If you just were looking at March, what would your areas of focus be when we first baselined and started in March of 2018?
How many items are we allowed to work on?
So what is your first areas? Maybe it's just 2 or 3?
2 or 3. All right. For sure, would start with team process, and then pawn or player. The other one would be either team roadmap or learning.
And why did you pick those?
Those are the ones that have the least amount of green.
Okay. Other thoughts? Would someone take another approach?
I'd pick roadmap just because it's the most amount of red.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if it's early in a project, you want to make sure you get your roadmap right. If you don't have the vision, how are you going to align?
Great. Any other thoughts on that? Any other approach you would take? So Rob said, I'd be concerned about the quality of code, disappeared altogether. Yeah.
You could also prioritize these categories as a team and say, this one's our highest priority as a team. And even though it may not be the worst, you might focus on that instead.
Right. So once you put this into the Excel, you have that conversation with the team of like, this is how we started in March. And have that conversation with them. What does the team feel? Does this, and talk a little bit more. Hey, in March, we were mostly yellow. We had no green at all for team process. What are areas that we think we need to work on for team process, and having that conversation as a group? And then when you have another time period and you have a baseline and then you did it again, you can have the conversation of, what changed? Okay, we have more red in this than we did before. What changed? We said there was some lacking in learning, but now it got worse. What caused that? Having that conversation with the team. So now you have something to have the conversation, and you can pick certain categories. And to your point, you can prioritize them even before you start. And that way the team really knows what to work on. And that could be your measure as you go through over the course of time. And being able to track this maybe within 2 years or so, and seeing the progress and being able to see and having that conversation within the team.
One other thing I'd add in here, Sheena, is as soon as you get these results, like the within a couple of hours after your team went into Mural and put all the check marks in there, I'd go into Excel, update this, and then publish it. Take a screenshot and publish it right away. Be transparent. Have that level of transparency always. Put it out into your team chat channel, put it into one of your Confluence pages, but make sure you document it and make sure you share it. And say, we'll have a conversation about this next week, but just here's where the numbers are. Make sure that you're transparent with it right away.
You don't want it to just be the Scrum Master that cares about these things, right? You want the whole team to really care about this, and they're all in then. And they really get a feel for what's going on. Because someone, there might be someone who's always happy-go-lucky, and it's like everything's great all the time. But then others may not feel that way. And so now it gives you that visualization and everyone really understanding, oh, we're really all over the board here.
Other questions or comments on this one before we move on? Lorena, did that help when I told you we were going to punt?
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much.
I do have a question. Can you maybe share what is a good aspiration for what this would look like on a team?
A good aspiration, a good goal?
Yes.
So I'll give my 2 cents, and then Sheena, if you want to take yours at it. So my aspiration as a coach when I came in for this team was I wanted to first get a baseline as to where they felt they were at. And then I wanted to identify any problem areas, but I also wanted to identify the things that they were doing well and keep encouraging those. On this one, I could tell that things were not going in a good direction as they kept moving along. And the goals that I would have is I'm clearly going to check in from, this is a short time span from March to July. I'm definitely going to check in by the end of the year again. My goal for this team is to get them to start working together as a team and to make sure that their support from their Scrum Master and their process is going better, and work on those fundamentals, and then measure it again by the end of the year. That would be my goal looking at this.
I think also, maybe I won't say having specific ones. Like my teamwork, I really want us to be, closer to the 9 and the 10 or something along that line. Maybe even the team try to figure out what's good enough for them, at least to start, and then how much more they want to improve. Again, put the onus on the team to figure out how they see success.
Good one, Sheena.
And then I have a question.
Yes.
What was going on with some categories changing over time?
I do believe that when looking at this team, they had a couple things change. Like they actually went from, they used to call them technical product owners when I first went in to coach them, and then they start calling them product owners. They were changing a number of things, and so they had to change some of the categories. That's why I would encourage you, whatever your categories are going to be, keep them very high level, generic. I don't want to say generic. Keep them broad to begin with. So they had them very specific, that what they were measuring to begin with, and then they kind of fine-tuned them. Like they had mission up there before, and they changed the team roadmap. You can see that right here. The second one from the bottom. They went from what their mission was to their actual, what their roadmap was. And roadmap was a much better description of what they were trying to identify with, what this team was working towards. So they were fine-tuning their categories when they were too specific to start with.
Well, and I get that in terms of just naming a category, but something like easy to release versus quality of code, they seem like two different things. So
Sure.
Did one not matter anymore, or?
So again, it depends on which teams you're talking about. So some teams, when they went from quarterly releases down to the end of sprint releases to continuous integration. Some teams are doing, toggle switches, releasing things right into production as soon as they're ready. Some were still just waiting for, we can't release until once a month type of schedules. So that's the great thing about this is you fine tune it. Let's say you're a coach or a scrum master over 2 teams, you fine tune it. You've got 2 different teams and you just create 2 sets of two sets of them based on what the teams are doing. And this is just a screenshot moving along with this team.
I have one quick question.
Yeah, yes.
Because the numbers on the far right, there's a -1 and +1. What do those mean?
Yeah, that was what Jamie had pointed out earlier. That was the difference that they made between July and December. So for teamwork, they actually went down. So you can see there was 5 green before, and now there's 5 yellow. Now the problem, again, this is not going to be statistically held up by a mathematician because there was actually 8 team members who took the score in December versus 17 members that took it in July. But the big difference to me, like the first category, there was 5 green and now there's 5 yellow for teamwork. That's worth a conversation to have. We went from 5 green to 5 yellow. Why are we feeling that way? What's going on here? What's changed over the last 6 months, 5 months, that our teamwork doesn't feel as good as it was back in the summer? So the plus or minus is just showing the direction that we're moving. And you would definitely want to, if you've got 8 team members and one of them's out for a vacation, make sure when that person comes back, the following Monday, get their vote in there to make sure that it's accounted for, so you don't have that anomaly. But also, I'm looking at this screen and I'm seeing that teamwork is probably is a conversation I want to have. We used to be 5 green, now we're 5 yellow. We're not headed in a good direction, are we? We should have a conversation about it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, hi, I'm Namrata. I'm sorry I joined late.
Oh, you're
but I do
fine.
have a question. Yeah, thank you. I do have a question. Like, what are the constant factors when you consider calculating all of these or putting this together? Like, did you consider that the team is constant? The same people are there. There may be addition, but there is no deletion of a substantial team member for any reason, whatever it may be. And there is just an addition, or as you said, in July, you had just 8 members, and in December, there was 17, right? Yeah. So are you considering the number of team members here and the contribution in terms of there is addition, but there is no deletion of any member who was a substantial member who could, adjust or orient or had that capability of getting together or mingling with the team members, helping them or something like that, which we cannot actually put it in the numbers in any way.
Right. So great question. And again, if it's a Scrum team, you're on our team, you have a voice in this. So all Scrum team members have a voice in this. And so if you were added to the team, you're part of the team. So you're going to have a vote in this. This is for everyone that is on the team. So product owners and developers, you need to have a voice in this. And so Sheena, your thoughts are your thoughts, but I always stayed out of this. Where I was using this on these teams, I was actually a coach. I was not the Scrum Master, but when I actually ran these on my teams as a Scrum Master, I actually stayed out of that, out of the voting, because I wanted to remain neutral on this and wanted to know where the team was. So I was the only one that did not vote on that. Sheena?
So yeah, to your comment about possibly losing members and then doing this, right? And so I'm going to use your example there for teamwork. Suppose we lost a person in December of 2018 in this diagram. Maybe that's why we went to yellow, and having that conversation of, okay, why do we go to yellow? Oh, well, we lost this great skill or this person. And then having that conversation of, how can we adjust to that? And how do we, maybe we lost a skill, how can we now put that back into the team and having that? Maybe it's also ties into learning. Okay, we need to build up our whatever front end developer skills that we lost or something along that line. So you may, I mean, that's reality, right? There's chances that you might lose
Yeah.
team members to other teams or whatever the case may be, as well as additions. So you still want to try to be consistent with your categories through the periods of time, whether it's adding or removing team members off of the team. It will reflect on your pictures.
Yeah,
in your
and
colors.
also, I would like to know, how do you document this? Sometimes, documentation really helps in the future, like any such project. So how do you this particular scenario, if you want to document just to, help for others, maybe for self-learning for the Scrum Master, is there such template or there is some standard way of documentation such scenarios?
So we didn't have again, this was for the team, by the team. This was not for management. And we documented it strictly by, I made sure I kept copies of each time we ran this. I added a new Excel tab, and then we kept the screenshots, the actual results that you just saw on a team Confluence page. Kept those results so that way we could see, and we had transparency on those. But these were not given to management to say here's where we're headed and use them. So
Yeah.
And we don't want to use this to compare teams either, right? You want the team to feel safe, that they could be totally honest within their team and not someone's using it to compare other teams against each other.
Yeah, that's the point. I liked it. Thank you. Thank you.
And then how often would you say, so you mentioned at times you give it either quarterly or 6 months, you said, as far as timing goes, to kind of look at the numbers again and see how we're doing.
how often? Is that what you said, Sheena? Yeah, so it just depends on the team. With a new team, especially with that team right there, I was encouraging that particular team to run every 6 months.
I actually asked the wrong question. So do you do this in a retro?
Oh, sorry. I did not do this as part of retrospective. I would do this as a standalone meeting. It was very quick and easy. This was 15 minutes to come in and take the initial, do the check marks. And then after that, it was very easy. Then we would have a follow-up conversation to talk about the results. And that was usually about an hour. But I would not have it part of the retrospective because the retrospective has value in itself to talk about the previous sprint that we just were dealing with. And I wanted to focus on just this results and what we're going to deal as a team. With that, I'm going to share with everyone the files. They're in Excel and PowerPoint. They're free. Please use them. Go ahead. But any last questions? This is just a reminder of our meetup next month. We're going to have a Scrum Master Roundtable conversation in February. What other questions do you have for us? Oh, thank you for putting the SEU in there.
I have a question, Ben. You made it clear that this is just for team improvement. This is for the team and not to compare teams. Are there other strategies that we can use to compare teams where they're at in their maturity model?
I've not gone there, Greg, and I'm sure you could use this very similar type of process to do that, and same type of categories. I would just caution you, make sure you're measuring an apple to an apple.
Yeah, and I was only asking because I've been asked at different points to measure teams against teams to see where they stand.
And Greg, I would say if you do that, like maybe as an agile coach, where you're maybe supporting multiple teams and you're trying to figure out where do you need to reinforce certain coaching areas and perspectives, maybe then. But a lot of times we do say, please don't compare teams because you lose that safety aspect of it. But if you're in the role of like an agile coach, and you're trying to help teams and trying to figure out where did they need help, where can you reinforce or retrain and things along that line,
Right.
that makes sense. But from that approach.
I dropped a link in the chat for comparative agility. Used to be a free offering for certain levels of participation in Scrum Alliance. Since then, they've taken it to be a rather high cost tool. One of the things I really liked about the comparative agility tool is really agile Scrum oriented. And it includes the ability to compare the team you're measuring against into different industries, different countries. It basically check your team not only longitudinally with itself, but against other groups of teams more broadly, and just kind of see how you're doing in the world. I think their cheapest pay model is like $600 a year, so you definitely have to be large enough to make it worthwhile. But I found a lot of value in that tool just because they worked so hard to make the questions neutral and relevant in terms of the context of those particular types of teams, and then the very broad ability to compare did have value.
Thank you. With that, I think we're all wrapped up and we've run up your hour, and we want to thank you for joining us, Sheena.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Please take these tools to work with your teams and have more of those conversations that you're already having, and now having actual categories to be able to expand upon and get feedback.
Thank you for being here, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any
Thank
way
you so
that
much.
we get the recordings for this?
Yes, we will be sending out an email to the recording.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And-
You have
You're
a great day. Thank you. See you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Sorry.
Great weekend.
Will that
Good work.
mural
Thank you.
app work